Hello, this is Fred from Pixel for Fiction. I hope you're well. As I've often mentioned in my exchanges with users or in the description of packs relating to this period, I often refer to an essential pack of set elements that would enable creators to be more autonomous. So here is the first volume in the theme around the bunker. If you've ever worked in the audiovisual or film industry, you'll know that natural or artificial sets and lighting are essential to create the atmosphere and depth needed for any story. I took a lot of time to finalize every detail and get as close as possible to certain historical realities, even if it's not possible to recreate exact reality. I rely, as always, on archive images, and unfortunately the latter can be counted on the fingers of one hand. I took the time to research everything about the period, including furniture, electrical systems such as switches, and accessories such as the strange conical-shaped fire extinguisher. Whenever possible, I tried to base my work on elements that were as close to historical reality as possible. While I'm aware that Oliver Hirschbiegel's excellent film Der Untergang also treated historical details as very important, I noticed that the technical team took certain liberties with essential sets, such as the sofa where Hitler and Eva Braun committed suicide, which will be reconstructed according to the rare archive images and should be available in the final volume of this series. It has to be said that this film was released in 2004, and its production predates that date, so certain facilities for accessing period photographs were not yet available. Today, if you look hard enough, you can know as much as a historian on the subject and have access to unique documents. For my part, I also took certain liberties when information was lacking, when sources were contradictory or not precise enough. I therefore had to reconstitute certain elements of the decor due to a lack of iconographic resources, basing myself on certain similar sources. During my research, I acquired a virtual reality version of the bunker, produced by specialized historians. I have to say that I was, on certain points, extremely disappointed, particularly in the reconstruction of the sets. It wasn't a faithful reconstruction, but rather a rather motley collection of various assets found here and there, added to some personal reproductions. I think the author's original intention was very laudable, but they must have lacked the means to realize each element independently. Overall, however, this virtual experience is well worth the effort, because apart from these questionable visual details, the authors have taken the trouble to reconstruct the entirety of the two bunkers according to the precise plans. And there's a wealth of previously unpublished information to be found there. For the record, these bunkers and the chancellery were visited by numerous historical figures immediately after the unconditional surrender of the Third Reich. They were later blocked by Soviet troops, as the bunkers were located in the USSR occupation zone, until the late 1980s. Despite Soviet efforts to eradicate them, they could still be visited by independent East German explorers at great risk. The ruins were not far from the famous Berlin Wall. Then, in the early 90s, they were almost completely dismantled. A residential area and a few commercial buildings were erected on the site of the former chancellery and the famous bunkers. According to Stasi archives, the FuhrerBunker was never completely destroyed. Only the chancellery bunker was dismantled. The FuhrerBunker still exists, buried under tons of cement. The idea of recreating a confined space is an interesting one from a storytelling point of view. In my case, although I remain very serious professionally and a stickler for detail, my stories often take on a zany, mocking tone. I don't take myself too seriously, but that's the better to hide a certain depth in the subjects I deal with. One of these days, I'll have to show you how to almost easily create a comic strip using the Reallusion suite and other tools. The only constraint for you, even if you're bad at drawing, is to be creative enough to imagine all kinds of stories. Remember, the story is always more important than the rest. A well-told story, even with paltry means, will always captivate your audience. And if you know how to tell stories, then it's high time to unleash that creative verve by simplifying at least some parts of the process. Well, enough chatter. Let me introduce you to the setting. In this first volume, it's a recreation of the conference room and waiting room. So there are 2 rooms in this first volume, and these are the ones that give access to all the other rooms in the FuhrerBunker, including the map room, Hitler and Eva Braun's private apartments, and so on. It was in this room, accessed through this door, that the doomed couple committed suicide. As you can see, this first volume contains a substantial number of objects. As these sets need to make practical sense, I've organized the elements so that they can easily be made visible or hidden, depending on the needs of your staging. Like independent partitions on a film set, each wall has its own hierarchy of objects that you can hide completely. Just as within these collections, you'll find subgroups of objects that you can hide in their entirety or individually. Here you see the collections. This is Iclone's main light system, which I've renamed, and here you have all the collections for your decor. I have to admit that this set is rather greedy in terms of video memory. According to the stats, with all the lighting parameters activated, you can easily go up to 6 GB for these 2 complete rooms. I therefore recommend a fairly generous card to avoid crashing. But one thing to do, when you're setting up your scene, is to deactivate all the lighting parameters. They are not useful until you're rendering, and considerably lighten your system resources. The other thing, as I was saying, is to conceal certain non-essential elements during your staging. In the manner of Matryoshka, the famous Russian dolls, you can conceal all or part of the scenery according to your needs. Occulting a wall is very useful in a set, allowing you to use more precise angles, different focal lengths without space constraints. As you surely know, it's only the area in your camera's field that matters. Everything else is superfluous. So you can recreate a scene with only a visible area of scenery. Beware, however, of lighting effects, as by making part of the scenery invisible, the light naturally changes. So you'll need to adjust the light on your characters using a custom lighting set for each of your scenes. In Volume 1, you can move, arrange and animate the objects as you wish. Each element is unique. For the electrical part, as I said, you have a whole set of cables and elements such as switches, junction boxes, Bakelite clips, etc. As far as lamps are concerned, there are two models in this pack: the famous bunker lamp and the one commonly known as the industrial lamp. For both models, you have three options: on, off, or just with glow. Remember that you can deactivate the lighting yourself by going to the lamp's parent elements. Here, for the industrial lamp, you have the interior ambience and the spotlight that simulates light projection. To change light intensities, simply go to the Modify panel and adjust light intensity and other parameters. For glow, as this is a map, you need to go directly to the object in question. In the texture details, you'll find the associated glow slot. Click on the glow map and adjust the strength of the luminescence. Another thing to know is the project parameters. Here, you can fine-tune the glow settings for the entire project. Here, I've gone all out. It's not very fine, but it gives us the illusion of diffused, pale lighting. The other packs in the Bunker series will bring other vintage electrical system elements, so the day you want to recreate a building or house from the 40s, you won't need to call in an electrician. The same goes for furniture. If he passed himself off as an ascetic, it's important to remember that Hitler had the tastes of a petty bourgeois, not very refined and very old-fashioned. Secondly, the bunker didn't allow for the placement of excessive furniture. These were objects of value, of course, but quite commonplace for the time. Triggerable objects include, of course, all doors that can be animated, handles, levers, etc., as well as pedestal table drawers, metal cabinet doors, and the famous Mini Max fire extinguisher that can be unhooked from its stand. Don't forget to use the Move Local function for all your manipulations. Well, that's about all there is to it. If you have any comments or ideas for improvement, I'd be delighted to hear from you. Please note that the other volumes are in preparation. The finale will be a real surprise. But I think you already know that the last volume in this series, The Bunker, will refer to the character who so tragically marked the history of the European continent. I'd like to take this opportunity to point out if you already own the following 8 packs. In this case, you can claim the Bunker Volume 1 pack free of charge, as a way of thanking you for your support. Every one of your purchases helps me to produce other historical reconstructions of costumes and accessories that you can use in your creative projects. Send me a private message, as the developer's interface doesn't yet allow you to do this automatically. I'll verify your account and send you your pack in return, free of charge. This is Fred from Pixel for Fiction. I hope you enjoy your creations with this first volume of sets and the associated clothing packs. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. See you soon.